The HR office was silent. You could hear the sound of the air conditioner buzzing. My colleague, the same woman who used to smile at me every morning, was sitting across the table, her face pale, her hands shaking. The HR manager slid a folder toward her. Inside were the emails, the proof. The lies she thought would stay hidden forever. She looked at me like she couldn't believe what was happening, but I didn't say a word. I just looked back calm, steady, as they told her she was being terminated. My name is Morgan, and this is how I got revenge on the colleague who tried to destroy my career. A year before that day, I never would have believed I had it in me to get revenge. I was just Morgan, the quiet one in the office, the one who remembered everyone's birthdays, who brought cupcakes on Fridays, who stayed late to finish other people's work because I couldn't stand disappointing anyone. Yeah, I was that kind of person. I worked at Brightstone Advertising, a mid-sized agency in downtown Chicago. The office wasn't fancy. Gray cubicles, humming printers, and the constant smell of burnt coffee from the kitchen. But I loved it. It was the first job that made me feel like I was part of something. My team handled client campaigns. Long hours, tight deadlines, but I enjoyed every bit of it. I wasn't the loudest in the room, but people respected my work. Or at least, I thought they did. Then came Erica, the woman who would turn my life upside down. She joined our team in late spring, tall, polished, always wearing those expensive heels that clicked across the floor. She had that perfect smile that made people instantly like her. And she was good, too good. Within weeks, she charmed everyone, including our manager. I liked her too. I mean, who wouldn't? She laughed at my jokes, brought me coffee, even asked me for help setting up her first client presentation. We clicked fast, or so I thought. Sometimes I wonder if she saw my kindness as weakness from the start. We started having lunch together, sharing sandwiches in the break room, or walking to the corner deli. We talked about everything: work, dating, family. She said she admired my work ethic. I told her I admired her confidence. It felt nice to have a friend in the office. A few weeks later, our manager announced that the company was opening a new position, team lead for campaign strategy. It was the first real promotion opportunity since I joined. Everyone congratulated me, said I was a natural fit, even Erica. She hugged me and whispered, "You've got this, girl." At that moment, I believed her. The first sign something was off came 2 weeks later. I'd sent a draft proposal to a major client, the kind of project that could make or break our quarter. The next day, my manager called me in. He looked disappointed. "Morgan," he said, "I got your email last night, and honestly, I'm confused. The proposal was missing half the sections. Did you send it before it was done?" I felt my stomach drop. I knew I'd double-checked that file. I ran back to my desk and opened the folder, but the file was incomplete. 3 entire pages were gone. I stared at the screen, frozen. Did I really forget? I replayed everything in my head. That's when I saw the file history. It had been opened an hour after I'd left the office, by someone using my login. I should have said something right then, but I didn't want to accuse anyone without proof. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Emails I swore I sent never arrived. Files went missing from the shared drive. During meetings, Erica would casually remind everyone that I'd been having trouble keeping up lately, always with that fake concern in her voice. "It's okay, Morgan, we all get overwhelmed sometimes," she'd say, right after making me look like a mess in front of the whole team. My manager started checking in more often, asking if I needed help, if I was doing okay mentally. It was humiliating. I started second-guessing everything I did. I began staying late just to triple-check my work. Sometimes I'd find Erica still there too, typing away. She'd smile and say, "You're such a perfectionist." I'd laugh it off, not realizing she was probably deleting my progress the moment I went home. The breaking point came with the Anderson account, the biggest client we'd ever had. I was in charge of the pitch. Weeks of planning, sleepless nights, endless revisions. The night before the presentation, I stayed until 11 p.m., finalizing the slides. I backed everything up on the drive and left my computer locked. When I came in the next morning, the file was corrupted. Wouldn't open. Every backup gone. Panic set in. I tried recovering it, begging IT for help. But by the time they restored a version, it was too late. the meeting had started. My boss had to improvise with half the data missing. The client wasn't impressed. We lost the account. That afternoon, HR sent me an email. Meeting request, performance concerns. When I saw Erica in the hallway, she smiled. That perfect, pitying smile. And I finally understood. HR said I'd been underperforming. My manager said he was disappointed but understanding. They gave me a formal warning. One more mistake and I was out. I went home that night and sat in my car in the parking lot for hours. I cried until my throat hurt. I thought about quitting. I thought about disappearing. But then, I thought about her smile. That's when something changed inside me. I stopped crying. I started planning. For the next few weeks, I pretended everything was normal. I laughed at her jokes, asked for her help, made her believe I'd given up. But behind that smile I was watching. Every move, every keystroke, every login. I started saving my files with hidden versions, one in the drive, one in a private cloud, one on an encrypted USB in my bag. I took screenshots of every file timestamp, every suspicious change. Then I noticed something odd. Every time my documents went missing, her computer was online, even after midnight. I knew she was working late, but not that late. So I set a trap. I created a fake project folder labeled Confidential CEO Campaign Draft. Inside was a decoy file with a tracking link. It would notify me whenever someone opened it. The next morning I checked my email. 2:14 a.m., access logged. From her account. That's when I knew it was time to end it. What came next would not only expose Erica, but make the entire company see who she truly was. And I was ready. When I first started noticing little mistakes in my reports, I blamed myself. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe the workload was finally catching up to me. But then things started getting stranger. One morning I walked into the office early, like I always did. The place was quiet, the hum of the AC the only sound. I opened my laptop and found an email from Mr. Benson, my manager. It read, "Morgan, we've received several complaints from clients about delayed responses and incorrect financial summaries. Please come to my office at 9 a.m. to discuss." I stared at it, completely lost. I double-checked my sent folder. All the emails were correct, all the reports clean. But when I clicked one file from last week, my stomach dropped. The numbers were all wrong. Entire columns had been rearranged. Someone had edited it. My hands trembled on the keyboard. No one else should have had access. Except Claire. I tried to calm myself down. Maybe she had made an honest mistake? Maybe IT had updated something? But then another thought crept in, a darker one. The accidental email she sent to Mr. Benson last week. The one that mentioned my report errors. The way she had smiled when I told her I'd double-checked the files. It wasn't an accident. At 9 a.m., I walked into Mr. Benson's office. Claire was already there, sitting beside him. Her arms crossed, face carefully composed. That kind of fake concern you see from people who secretly enjoy watching you burn. "Mr. Benson. Morgan, this isn't like you. But these mistakes, they're serious. We could lose clients." Narration. I tried to explain that someone had altered the files. I showed him the logs, but somehow they were clean. No record of edits. Claire, softly. "Maybe she just forgot to save the changes. We've all been overwhelmed lately." She said it so gently, like she cared. But her eyes told a different story. And Mr. Benson nodded, like her words made perfect sense. I left the meeting feeling like I had just been buried alive. That afternoon I sat at my desk pretending to work, but my mind was spinning. Someone had sabotaged me, and whoever did it knew exactly how to cover their tracks. So, I decided to start paying attention. For the next few days I stayed late. After everyone had gone home, I'd quietly go through my folders, emails, and system logs. I started keeping copies of everything on a hidden drive. And then one night I caught her. Claire had forgotten to log out of the shared database. Her name was in the activity log, time-stamped exactly when my files were altered. I took screenshots, dozens of them, and I waited. The next morning, she greeted me with that same sugary smile. "Morning, Morgan. How's your project coming along?" "Perfect," I said. "Almost done." She didn't know. "Not yet. That week, Mr. Benson announced a major client presentation, the one that could determine our team's yearly bonuses. Claire volunteered to assist me. Of course she did. We worked side by side for days. She'd accidentally delete slides, change numbers, forward wrong versions to the boss. But every time she did, I smiled. Because this time I was recording everything. Screen capture, audio backup, timestamps, all of it. By the time presentation day came, I had enough evidence to destroy her. But I wasn't ready yet. I wanted her to feel at first the same helplessness she had made me feel. During the presentation, Claire took over one of the sections, the financial forecast slide. She clicked next and the numbers appeared, but they weren't the ones we agreed on. They were completely wrong. Mr. Benson frowned. Mr. Benson, these numbers don't match last week's report. Claire nervously, oh, maybe Morgan updated them last night? Everyone turned to me. I calmly plugged in my flash drive. Actually, I said, this is the final version I submitted. Dated, timestamped, and approved. I projected the real version on the screen, and everyone saw the truth. The difference was glaring. Claire's face went pale. She tried to speak, but no words came out. That was the first time I saw her scared. And I wasn't done yet. That night I sat alone at home, staring at my laptop screen. I had the evidence. I could expose her completely. But something inside me hesitated. What if I looked petty? What if I made things worse for myself? I thought about all the times women in the office had been told to let it go, to be the bigger person. But then I remembered Mr. Benson's words. We could lose clients. Claire had risked my career, my income, my reputation. No, she needed to learn. So I crafted my plan carefully. I emailed HR anonymously, attaching all the logs and screenshots, and described the manipulation pattern, without mentioning names. Then I waited. 2 days later, HR announced an internal audit. Everyone was tense. Claire acted calm, but her voice cracked every time someone mentioned system checks. The audit team asked everyone for access to their work drives. Claire's smile finally disappeared when they asked for hers. Took less than a day. They found multiple instances of unauthorized edits, deleted files, and version mismatches, all under her login. When she was called into HR, she didn't come back. Just gone. But I didn't celebrate. Because even though justice was served, something felt off. Word spread through the office like wildfire. Some people congratulated me, others avoided me. Claire had been well-liked after all. And in a strange twist, some even whispered that I had framed her. That's when I realized, revenge doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes it just changes the battlefield. And this was only the beginning. The office felt different the next morning. Claire's desk was empty, her coffee mug gone, her screensaver black. It should have felt like victory, but it didn't. Everyone was whispering. Some glanced at me with quiet sympathy, others with suspicion. When I passed the break room, the chatter stopped. Someone even muttered, "She got Claire fired." The irony hit me. I'd spent weeks proving my innocence, only to be branded the villain. That afternoon, Mr. Benson called me into his office again. He was polite, almost distant. "Mr. Benson, Morgan, HR concluded their investigation. Claire's actions violated company policy. However, the board wants to avoid publicity. Let's move on and focus on rebuilding trust with our clients." Move on. After everything? He went on about team morale and second chances, but all I could hear was the quiet message beneath his words. Don't make noise. Don't talk about it. I nodded, pretending to agree. But inside something hardened. I'd been humiliated, gaslighted, and nearly destroyed. And now I was being told to move on? No, not this time. Tasks I was assigned suddenly got reassigned. Emails I sent to clients were mysteriously delayed in the system. My expense reports went missing. Intense whisper tone. First I thought it was paranoia. Maybe leftover trauma from what Claire did. But then, I found an email chain. One of my reports had been forwarded to another department, and CC'd to someone I didn't even know, Julia Marks, the director of operations. Julia. I'd met her only once at a company event. She was sharp, charming, and known for being ruthless. Rumor was she didn't like women who stood out too much. And now she had my name in her inbox. A week later, we had a division-wide meeting. Julia was there, standing at the front, speaking about integrity and workplace harmony. Her voice was calm, confident. But when her eyes met mine, I froze. There was something in her smile, the same subtle cruelty I'd once seen in Claire's. As the meeting ended, she stopped me by the door. "Julia, smiling Morgan, right? You handled that Claire situation impressively. I admire women who can stand their ground." "Me careful tone, thank you. I just wanted to protect my work." "Julia." "Of course. But you know how gossip spreads. Some people say you were too harsh. Be careful not to make enemies in the wrong places." It wasn't advice. It was a warning. That night I sat at my kitchen table, thinking about her words. Enemies in the wrong places. Was she defending Claire? Or warning me that she was the wrong place? I replayed everything. Claire's sabotage. The missing reports. The random reassignments. What if Claire hadn't acted alone? What if she was following orders? I decided to dig deeper. After hours, I logged into the company's internal database, the same one where I'd caught Claire. I searched through archived reports, shared folders, and internal tickets. Then I saw it, an approval request from 3 months ago. It was a transfer of data access permissions from Julia Marks to Claire Thomas. She gave Claire the access. She gave her the power to edit my files. My hands shook as I stared at the timestamp, dated right before everything began. So this wasn't just personal jealousy. This was manipulation. Controlled. Calculated. Corporate. I wanted to march into Julia's office the next morning and confront her. But I stopped myself. People like her didn't fight with words. They fought with influence, with whispers behind closed doors, with restructuring decisions that conveniently erase threats. So I needed to be smarter. Smarter than Claire. Smarter than Julia. And this time I wouldn't leave any trace. I started documenting everything again, but this time quietly. Every reassigned project. Every deleted email. Every altered timestamp. I even recorded brief audio notes when I overheard suspicious conversations. I became invisible, polite, agreeable, cooperative. I laughed at meetings, volunteered for tasks, and made everyone believe I was fine. But every smile was strategy. Every thank you was data collection. Because I knew Julia was watching, and she wanted me to slip. It was a Friday when she made her move. An internal memo went out. The company was restructuring departments. My name was on the list, transferred to a temporary internal role, with no client contact. A demotion in everything but title. I stared at the screen, the words blurring. All my hard work. My late nights. My loyalty. Gone. Replaced with temporary reassignment. I thought I'd feel angry. But all I felt was numb. That weekend, I didn't leave my apartment. I sat with my laptop open, scrolling through the same evidence over and over. Emails. Access logs. Approval chains. It was all connected. Every event leading back to Julia's digital signature. And yet, if I went to HR again, they'd just sweep it under the rug like before. She was too high up. If I wanted justice, I'd have to do what she did. Play the long game. I opened a blank document. Title: Chronology of Events, Data Manipulation and Abuse of Authority. It wasn't for HR. It wasn't for the board. It was for the press. I started writing. Every detail. Every date. Every person involved. But I wasn't stupid. I used a burner email, encrypted storage, and backup cloud drives. If Julia wanted war, I was ready. Because this time, revenge wasn't about anger. It was about truth. And truth, when weaponized, cuts deeper than any lie. When I walked into work Monday morning, Julia smiled at me like nothing had happened. But I smiled back. Because I knew something she didn't. Her empire was about to crumble. And I was the one holding the match. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it starts with silence. With observation. With patience. And that's exactly what I did. For the next few weeks, I played the perfect employee. I arrived early, left late, smiled at everyone. I even complimented Julia during meetings. She loved that. The more I praised her, the more she lowered her guard. She thought she'd broken me. But in reality, she'd just given me front row access to her downfall. The first step of my plan was simple: information. Power in corporate environments doesn't come from titles. comes from what you know. I started paying attention to every detail. Who Julia met with, who she avoided, what topics made her defensive. I noticed she often left meetings abruptly after talking about budget reallocations, and that she always carried a personal USB drive, something she never let anyone else touch. Interesting. So I started asking small, innocent questions. During lunch, I'd casually say things like, "Julia's amazing at managing expenses, right? She must handle a ton of accounts." Most people shrugged it off. But one of the junior accountants, Anna, hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Later that week, I found Anna alone in the break room. I made her coffee, smiled, and said quietly, "You don't have to say anything. But, does Julia ever ask you to adjust budgets for client projects?" Her eyes widened. She didn't answer, but she didn't deny it either. That was all the confirmation I needed. If Julia was manipulating numbers, there would be a trail. Not in the official reports, she was too smart for that. But maybe in her personal files. So I went digging. Not illegally, not yet. Just connecting dots. Her assistant, Brian, often left her office door unlocked when running errands. I waited until one Friday evening, when everyone had gone home. The floor was quiet. The glow from the city lights shimmered across the glass walls. I stepped into Julia's office. It smelled like expensive perfume and ambition. Her laptop was gone, but her file cabinet wasn't locked. Inside were neatly labeled folders, client accounts, confidential memos, board reports. But one stood out. A plain manila envelope marked only with a black dot. Inside were spreadsheets, handwritten notes, bank transfer slips, and one post-it note with my name on it. Morgan, potential liability. Watch her communication logs. She'd been monitoring me. I took pictures of everything, every page, every number. I put everything back exactly as I found it. No fingerprints, no trace. When I got home, I compiled the data. Over $80,000 in miscellaneous budget adjustments tied to fake vendor accounts. It was corporate theft. And she'd been hiding it for years. That was her secret. Her weakness. Her soft underbelly. But I couldn't just hand this to HR. They'd protect her again. I needed her to destroy herself. So I started the rumor. I casually mentioned to one of the senior managers that I heard Julia was planning a big restructuring to cover some accounting inconsistencies. I said it like a joke, laughing it off like office gossip. By noon, 3 departments were whispering about it. By the end of the day, Julia's name was everywhere. And the best part? I never said anything concrete. Just suggestions. Rumors are like smoke. They don't need fire to spread. A few days later, Julia called me into her office. She smiled, but her eyes were sharp. "Julia, there's been some chatter lately. About me. About financial irregularities. I assume you've heard something." Me innocently, "Oh, just office talk, you know how people exaggerate things." I didn't think it was true. "Julia, good. Because rumors can ruin reputations, Morgan. Be careful who you talk to." Her voice was calm, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. She was scared, and fear makes powerful people sloppy. That night, I waited until she left. I went back into her office, not to steal but to plant. On her desk, I left a printed page. One of her own fake vendor lists, anonymous, with the words, "How deep does it go?" No signature. No trace. Just enough to make her paranoid. The next morning, I watched from my desk as she found it. She froze, looked around, and quickly folded the paper away. She knew someone knew. And paranoia is a beautiful weapon. Over the next week, Julia started unraveling. Her meetings got shorter. She snapped at her assistant. She double-checked every email, every report. She even stopped trusting her own allies. Then came the final move. The board was holding its quarterly review. The one where financials were audited in detail. Julia was supposed to present the department's numbers. That morning, I anonymously sent the entire folder of her forged spreadsheets and bank slips to the board's shared drive. Under the subject, "Urgent. Discrepancy in budget reports. Please verify before meeting." No sender name. No trace. By noon, whispers turned to silence. Executives were pacing in the hallway. Julia walked past me once, her face pale, her lips tight. She didn't look powerful anymore. She looked hunted. When the meeting started, I watched through the glass. She began her presentation confidently, flipping through slides, until one of the board members interrupted. Board member. Julia, can you explain these discrepancies in your vendor reports? Her face froze. Julia. I'm not sure what you mean. Board member. These payments don't match your budget approvals. And some of these vendor accounts don't exist. She stammered, tried to deflect, but they had the evidence right there. Her own handwriting, her own accounts. I didn't need to see the rest. I already knew how it would end. Her office was sealed. HR sent out an email. Effective immediately. Julia Marks is no longer with the company. No details. No thank you note. Just erased. I sat at my desk staring at the message. After all the sleepless nights, the humiliation, the fear, it was finally over. But instead of satisfaction, all I felt was emptiness. Revenge had given me justice, but it had also changed me. I wasn't the same person who walked into this company full of hope. I had learned how to lie, how to manipulate, how to destroy, all for survival. Sometimes victory feels a lot like loss. Still, I didn't regret it. Because in a world where the powerful protect each other, sometimes the only way to win is to become the storm they never saw coming. And for the first time in months, I felt free. When the HR meeting finally ended, I walked out feeling lighter. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a shadow in my own office. People were whispering, yes, but not in pity this time, in shock. Word spread fast. Did you hear? Rachel got suspended. She was the one who messed with Morgan's report. She even tried to frame her. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Inside, I was still shaking, not from fear anymore, but from the release of everything I'd held in. The humiliation, the stress, the nights I'd gone home crying, the mornings I forced myself to smile. It was all pouring out now. But revenge, it's strange. It doesn't feel like fireworks or confetti. Feels like quiet justice. The next few days were surreal. Rachel's desk sat empty. HR announced she was being investigated for ethical violations. That was the corporate way of saying you're done here. A few coworkers, the ones who used to look through me, suddenly became friendlier. Hey Morgan, you handled that really well. Sorry if I ever made things harder for you. I smiled, but I didn't let them in. Because I had learned, some people only stand next to you when the spotlight is safe. Still, I focused on what mattered, doing my job. I poured everything into my projects again. I wanted my work to speak louder than any rumor ever could. 1 week later, my boss, Mr. Davis, called me into his office. Morgan, he said, I owe you an apology. I believed the wrong person. You were right all along. And then he added something I'll never forget. You've proven more professionalism in the last 2 months than most people show in their whole career. I wanted to cry. But instead I just smiled and said, thank you, sir. I just wanted the truth to come out. A few days later, Rachel came back to the office, not to work, but to collect her things. I happened to be there when she did. She didn't look like the Rachel I remembered. No confident smirk, no power walk. Her eyes were swollen, and her voice was quiet. She looked at me for a second. I didn't gloat. I just said, I hope you learned something from this. She hesitated. Then whispered, you really got me, didn't you? And I said softly, no, Rachel. You got yourself. That was the last time I saw her. After that, things changed. I was promoted, not out of pity, but because I'd earned it. HR even asked me to help revise internal policies to prevent future sabotage cases. It felt poetic. The system that once failed me now wanted me to help fix it. But the best part wasn't the promotion or the apology or even the justice. It was the peace. The kind of peace that comes when you stop trying to prove your worth to people who will never see it. I realized something powerful. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about rebuilding yourself stronger than they ever imagined. Months later, I was having lunch with a few coworkers in the break room, the same table where Rachel once whispered lies about me. One of them said, Morgan, you're like unshakable now. How do you stay so calm after everything? I smiled and said, because I learned that the loudest person in the room isn't always the most powerful. Sometimes it's the quiet one who watches, waits, and then acts at the right time. They laughed thinking I was joking, but I meant every word. In the end, Rachel's downfall wasn't my victory. My real victory was walking through fire and not letting it burn away who I am. If you've ever been betrayed at work, if you've ever been made to feel small, powerless, or invisible, hear me now. Don't let them change your character. Let them sharpen your clarity. Because one day when they're plotting your fall, you'll be quietly building your rise. So yes, Rachel tried to destroy me, but in doing so, she handed me the very tools I needed to win. And that, my friends, is what true revenge looks like. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever faced betrayal or injustice, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, because I have many more stories like this. Real, raw, and powerful, where we don't just survive, we rise. Until next time, this is Morgan reminding you, never let their lies define your truth. It's been 9 months since Rachel left the company. 9 months since that storm of lies, sabotage, and betrayal finally cleared. And when I look back now, it almost feels like a different lifetime. Like I was watching someone else live through that chaos. But that someone else was me. I still sit at the same desk. I still drink the same morning coffee. But everything feels different. Because now, when I walk into that office, I walk in with quiet confidence. Not the loud, overcompensating kind, but the kind that comes from knowing what I've survived. You see, revenge stories often end at the moment of victory. The villain falls, the hero wins, cue dramatic music, fade to black. But real life doesn't work like that. Real life keeps going. After revenge comes silence. And that silence, it's where you either grow or rot in bitterness. First, I thought I wanted Rachel to suffer. I wanted her to lose everything the way she made me lose my peace. But as weeks passed, that desire faded. Because the more I focused on her, the more power I was still giving her. And I'd already let her take too much from me. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to live the rest of my life defined by that chapter. Instead, I'd use it to become stronger. I started mentoring new employees, especially young women entering the corporate world. I told them the truth, that office politics can be cruel, that success attracts envy, and that the most dangerous kind of enemy is the one who smiles to your face. But I also told them something else, that integrity always has a longer shelf life than deceit. I remember one new hire, Lily, came to me after a team meeting. She said, "Morgan, you're like the calm in this place. Everyone respects you." And I smiled, because I knew where that calm came from. It wasn't born out of peace. It was forged through fire. There's a saying I keep written on a sticky note on my desk now. Let karma handle the noise. Let your work handle the proof. And every time I read it, I think of Rachel. Not with anger anymore, but with a strange sort of gratitude. Because without her, I might never have learned what I was truly capable of. Her betrayal became my blueprint for strength. Her cruelty became my clarity. Sometimes life doesn't give you heroes. It gives you villains to awaken your own. I used to think revenge was about balance. An eye for an eye. But it's not. True revenge is walking past the people who tried to destroy you and realizing you don't even need them to apologize anymore. It's peace. It's dignity. It's knowing you didn't lose yourself, even when they wanted you to. So yes, Rachel lost her job. But I gained something far more valuable, myself. If you're listening to this and you're dealing with your own Rachel, someone who's lying about you, sabotaging you, making you feel like you're crazy, take this as your reminder. You don't need to fight fire with fire. You fight it with focus. You fight it with truth. You fight it by becoming so undeniably good at what you do that even your enemies are forced to acknowledge your success. And one day they'll look up and realize you're standing on the very mountain they tried to bury you under. Because here's the secret. Revenge isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. When you choose grace over gossip, hard work over hatred, and patience over panic, that's when life starts paying you back in ways no office rumor ever could. So keep your head high, your circle small, and your integrity untouchable. That's not weakness. That's strategy. That's real power. Now, when I walk past Rachel's old desk, it's empty. But it reminds me of something powerful. You don't need to take revenge on everyone who wrongs you. Sometimes you just need to outlast them. Because eventually, truth always walks back into the room. And when it does, it remembers who stood tall and who fell apart. Thank you for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, If you've ever faced betrayal, office drama, or injustice, I want you to know you're not alone. Drop your story in the comments below. Let's make this space a community where we rise together, where pain becomes power, and where every scar tells a story worth sharing. And if you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe, so you don't miss the next story about survival, revenge, and redemption. Because this is just one of many tales I've lived, and I promise, the next one might just be yours.